What is going on, guys? Carter here with Edged Mindset. Thanks for joining me. Strap in. This is going to be a fun one. We're talking about fakes, clones, copies, dirty, rotten, knife, design, stealing companies. We're talking about that today because a couple reasons, two reasons. I just uploaded a video comparing these two. So this is a fake Marfione custom scarab that somebody sent into the channel. And this is a real one. And I did a video kind of comparing the two. And for the most part, the video just really says, how do you tell the difference? Why is this one better? So on and so forth. But towards the end, I kind of start to go off on a little bit of a rant on what I think about clones. I posed the question, I don't fully understand the appeal of buying them. But it's like a 20-minute video. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't make it that far. So I wanted to dedicate a video asking that question because I'm legitimately wanting some answers. But before you start answering, I've got some prerequisite information that is needed to give some context to that question. I also wanted to expand on kind of what I think about clones and copies and fakes in general. I've been around in the knife world for a good amount of time, since like 2010 or so. I started to get into kind of, I guess you could say, clonable knives. Probably 2013, 2014. What I mean by that is kind of, the Striders, the CRKs, the Microtechs, the whole wave of knife cloning. Now, of course, knife cloning existed well before that, but it was so diluted. It was more like, this, right? Where it's like such a cheapened version of the knife that nobody really cared, right? Before that time period, they would take like really expensive high-end like Michael Walker customs and then do a super cheap diluted version of it and put it in gas stations. That's where the whole gas station knife thing comes from. That's why when you show shiny customs, people say gas station knife, because they literally are cheap copies of high-end customs, and that's why we've created that association. Anyways, going on a tangent here, prior to that, that's all you'd really see, but in the 2013, 14-ish era, that's when Chinese manufacturing tried to step up their game and they really started to copy and clone and duplicate mid to high level knives. So I've been around since that whole thing. I saw the birth of that. I saw the very first fake Striders, the double gunner grips that were being made in China and what people were saying about them and how alarmed people were about them. So I've been here from the beginning. So that's my expertise, in case you were wondering why you should listen to my opinion. Although, I don't know. I don't think anyone should listen to my opinion anyways. But in case you were wondering, that is why. Now, before I start diving into my question about, asking why people would buy clones or why they're into it, let me give you my overall kind of generalized opinion on them. At my core, I don't like him. That's pretty obvious. I don't like him. I don't think it's good to overtly steal design. Actually, first, sorry. I know you thought we were getting into the meat of it. Let me do some more prerequisites. Generally speaking, when I'm talking about clones and fakes, I am talking about the obvious, full-on fakes, right? Like this, right? This knife is copying this knife. It's stealing logos. It's stealing IP. And it's trying to do a cheaper version of this with the intention of potentially misleading consumers, right? I'm not talking about general style lifting or feature lifting. For example, top of mind, the Max Ace Draco, which is their new single action OTF. I actually have a couple on the way. I'm very excited about it. Now, clearly you can see they lifted a lot from the Halo, and not just the mechanism, right? Because the mechanism existed before the Halo, but there are some specific actions of the Halo that they took, and it's pretty obvious. However, it's not a direct one-to-one copy. Anybody can tell that they weren't trying to pass it off as a Halo. They did lift a lot of designs there, and it fits in that gray area. I'm not saying they get a free pass because they didn't directly copy it and put the logos on there. It's definitely questionable, but when I'm talking about, for the context of this video, talking about fakes and clones, I mean the ones that are literally stealing logos and things. So the Lightning which is a very common knife, is based off of the OG, the QD, Quick Deploy Scarab from Microtech. Very clearly, it's taking design language and things from this knife. However, nobody's going to buy this thinking it's a Microtech Scarab, right? There's no logos. It's not a direct copy. So when I talk about copies and clones, I'm specifically, especially for this video, talking about overt clones. So what is my opinion on them? What has been my opinion on them? I don't like them. I don't think it's good. I don't condone buying the fakes. However, to me, and of course I'm not, context here, I don't own a knife company. I don't make knives. So my perspective is, next to worthless compared to somebody who's spent their life designing and building a knife just to see it get stolen. But as a consumer and an enthusiast, I don't like it. I don't think they should be condoned. I don't think they should be spoken about in a good light. I would never suggest anybody buy one. I would never promote buying one. If anybody asks where to get this in the comments, that comment's going to be deleted. If anybody's overtly saying that this is amazing and you should buy these, it's going to get deleted. I just don't want to be a proponent of that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I never really personally saw it as a huge issue. Primarily, a lot of people share this opinion. Anybody that's going to buy the clone or the fake probably never intended on buying the real one anyways. More than likely, very few of these fakes end up in people's hands where they really thought they bought the real deal. I know that's the fear, right? The fear is you think you're buying this, you pay close to this price, you end up with this, and you don't know until you post a picture and people say, dude, that's a fake. It's happened, but it's just not the huge issue that I think some people thought it would be or think it is. It just doesn't happen. Most of the people buying fakes, they know they're buying fakes, right? Or they're just completely oblivious and they just think, hey, that's a cool looking knife. It's $50 on Ali. I'll just buy it, right? Whatever the case may be. So I just never really saw it as a huge problem. And I don't think it turned into a particularly big one. I could be wrong. Any knife makers or knife company owners chime in. I don't know. Has it been a big epidemic of issues? Have you been able to quantify to say the prolifence? That's not a word. The existence of these fakes has cut into profits and company growth in a significant way. I am curious to see if anybody has any data on that or any numbers on that. But from the outside looking in, I don't know. I don't see it being that huge of an issue. And I think it's kind of corroborated because it does seem like companies have kind of calmed down on their outrage on it. And maybe it's just they've realized there's not much they can do. But it does seem like it's not the huge fight it used to be. And I'm kind of making the leap that it has something to do with kind of what I'm thinking here, that it just, at the end of the day, it didn't end up being that much of an overt issue that people thought it may have been, like back in the early 2000s or whatever. This is kind of an interesting, when we're talking about clones and fakes, this is kind of an interesting one. So this is a Desert Knife Works Sand Shark. Now, for all intents and purposes, this is made in China, and the original Sand Shark was made in the US. It's a very famous knife. This one copies kind of the overall look of the knife, and then it modifies the internals, which is what made the original Sand Shark famous. So for all intents and purposes, you would think, oh, this is a fake, it's a clone. But technically, legally, it's not, because the person that made this knife purchased the company and the name legally. They now own Desert Knife Works. They own the Sand Shark design, so they can legally make the knife. They chose to make a cheaper version in China with modified internals. So it does kind of create that little gray area where it's like, well, I don't know, is it a clone? Just because somebody signed some paperwork so that they could legally make this knife, does that mean it's any less egregious than this? I don't know. That's the first question I want to pose to you guys. Like, I mean, this is authorized. It's legally authorized, right? So from a contract, from a legal standpoint, this one's legal, this one's not. However, if you strip paperwork away and contracts and, who owns an LLC, they're essentially the same thing, right? You're taking a knife that was made in the US that somebody toiled their asses off to make, and it's being made cheaply in China and sold for less money. Whereas this one is doing the exact same thing. And so you do kind of question, like, how different are these things? I know, doing things legally is a big deal, right? It is a big deal. But from the context of this video, from a moral standpoint, or objectionally whatever, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Is it all that different? I don't know. I mean, yes, I think it is. But it is kind of an interesting question, right? That just kind of popped in my head when I was getting ready for this. So I never really I never got too up in arms about the fakes. I didn't ever think they would be that big of an issue. Kind of like I said before, people buying fakes, they're not going to really buy the real thing anyways. Because there's two camps of people buying these fakes. There's the people that just don't know, right? Casual people that are like, I want a cool knife. They go on AliExpress or DHgate or whatever, and they poke around. They see something cool. They're like, oh, I've always wanted a switchblade. This one looks neat. It's got a dagger on it. That's cool. And they buy it and they get it and they carry it and they kick around the house, and they never really knew it's a fake, right? They just thought it was a cool knife for however much money they spent, and they're kind of oblivious to the whole thing. The other camp, and that camp, I'm not really addressing them because A, they would never buy this knife ever, and B, they're uninformed. They don't know any better. They just bought something they thought was cool. And yes, you could say if the fakes didn't exist, they never would have got this knife, but then they probably just never would have bought any knife, because by no means would they ever purchase something like this. But the other camp are the ones that know they're buying fakes. And now we're going to dive into the whole question part of this, where I'm just wondering what the appeal is for people that know, for example, that this is a fake custom Marfione. They don't want to buy this knife, which I totally understand. I totally get it. This is a crazy amount of money to spend on a knife. And there's lots of other knives that will work just as well for way cheaper and make more sense. I totally understand that. But what I don't understand is why you would say, well, then I'm going to get this one. Because I don't get the appeal. These are still, this is still, I think this was like $170 or something, based on what I looked around for this fake here. It's not cheap either. But what do you do with this? What's the point of getting something like this? Because you're not getting the pride of ownership, right? You're not joining the Marfione custom club, right? The enthusiast, the knife enthusiast, the friendship, the camaraderie of the knife community. You're not getting your ticket into that with this. In fact, it's the opposite. You're going to get booed and shunned by that group. So you're not joining into the cultural aspects of knife collecting, especially mid to high level knives. And if you're simply looking for a knife to use, to carry around and use, there's so many other options that you can pick up. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, it's because I like the design. I like the look of it. And so I wanted to get that. I would never pay this much. And I've seen some people kind of demonize the knife companies, saying, well, they're the bad guys. They're charging way too much money. So it kind of gives them some justification to buy stolen designs. And I don't really get that. They paint them out to be these evil shysters that are stealing from their pocket because they're being so greedy with the knives. I don't know. I'm just going to show this one here. They're being so greedy with how they're pricing the knives that they're practically forcing your hand to buy fakes, right? It's not my fault. Which, of course, is all BS. Complete BS, and it's no justification. But at the end of the day, like, I get the initial appeal, right? I get the idea of seeing this and saying, man, that's a cool knife. I really wish I could get that. I could never afford that. I would never want to afford that. And then you stumble across this and you're like, oh, well, I can't afford that. I get that initial catch to say, ooh, that makes sense. But if you play it forward, what are you buying? This isn't something you can be proud of. You can't show this to people and, post pictures online and kind of feel proud of like supporting a cool legacy American company. And then you're going to say, well, that's not the point of a knife. A knife is meant to be used and cut. Well, then I wouldn't recommend this thing anyways. Like, this is not, a lot of the times in these mid to higher level knives, like, you're not paying extra money because it's that much better of a knife. You're paying that money for that extra sauce, the history, the culture, the people that enjoy that knife, the pride you get in supporting those companies and owning a piece of that art that they created. That's what you're paying for. You can buy a very good knife for not that much money, especially if you're buying overseas. Like, if you just need a knife, there's so many options. Why delve into stolen designs, stolen logos, and things like that? I just don't understand what you're getting from it. Like me, I've got to send this back today. That's why I'm hurrying up and shooting this video. I would never, like, what would I do? Because I envisioned myself, well, what if I bought one of these? What would I do with it? Nothing. Literally nothing. It would sit in a box and do nothing, because I wouldn't be able to show it off. I wouldn't want to carry it around in case somebody wanted to see it, and I would be embarrassed. And it's not some amazing user. I got plenty of knives that I can carry and use, OTFs or side opening knives. Doesn't really matter. Even this lightning OTF, like, there's so many better knives that I could carry and use. I don't know why I'd want something with stolen IP, especially stolen logos. I mean, this is trying to be an overt facsimile of the real thing. It's not just inspired by, it's not similar to, it's not borrowing some features. I mean, this is stealing logos, trying to look like the real deal. And I just don't get it. So if you are somebody that buys these, let me know. Like, what are you getting out of the deal, really? Like, what makes you say, yeah, I'm glad I bought this? Comment down below. I'm really, really curious. And also comment down below what your opinion of fakes, clones, things like that are. Do you think I'm being too soft on them? Do you think they really are kind of have been and still are the scourge of the knife community? Or do you think it's not that big a deal and it is what it is kind of a thing? Comment down below. I'm very curious what you think. Till the next video, I am out.